The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and pedantic forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program.
I think you're prejudiced.
Why am I prejudiced?
I think that statement was prejudiced because...
Puerile and pedantic?
No. Welcome to another fantastic... We haven't even started yet, and you've already prejudged this show.
I have,
fantastic.
Because they all are fantastic, and in comparison to other shows that you could watch.
Some are fantasticer than others.
No, well, not compared to this one.
Is fantastic a word?
Yes, it is.
Fantasticer.
Fantasticer is not a word. No. Fantastic is, however.
Hand me your thesaurus, would you?
Well, actually, I think I took it home. Anyway, welcome to the program, my friends. It's Thursday. To give you a kind of roadmap where we're going, both Agent 29 and I have several things to do today. So today's program is going to be cut a little bit short. We'll probably do a little bit more than an hour today, but we've got a lot of different stuff we have to do. So you'll get us for an hour, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow. And tomorrow's program in the studio, we will have the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, John Baer, or the House Appropriations Committee, I should say, Representative John Baer.
Yeah, I've heard of this guy. He looks kind of like Lex Luthor.
He does, and I've heard that about him, and he has his fingers controlling the strings of everybody.
Yeah, even now, I'm sure he wants to come here and try to show us how to do the show properly.
I'm sure he will. You know, everywhere Lex Luthor goes, he controls everything that's
Rip
there.
the soul out of the state.
You know, one good thing, though, is that I don't have to prepare a script for tomorrow's show because he's already done it.
You don't even have to be here. John and I can take
That's right. I don't even have to show up, and even if I do, I'll already have a script prepared for me. There's a lot of different things that we want to talk to Representative Baer about, or Chairman Baer, rather. And so he's going to join us in the studio for the first time being in the studio. And I'm sure it'll be a great conversation. So
we should arrange that, do that as a sight gag where he comes in and hands us both our scripts.
Well, he should. I mean, that's what the cow pie accuses him of all the time anyway. You know, he's scripted everything. And do you want to know why those were handed out? I mean, Ken, you tell me if I'm off base here. Is that there were so many things that had to be changed, and really it was more of an agenda than a script. And the Senate members of the Appropriations Committee really didn't do that much of anything, really, at all.
You want to know what actually happened?
Sure. I'm just making crap up as I go along.
Tell. If you walk into the House floor and those podiums that we all speak for, there are scripts
Everywhere.
Taped all over the top of those so that we do things procedurally and in order. All of us are new to appropriations. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it properly.
So which one have you chosen?
We had LSO. Everything I do is proper.
So I heard.
We had LSO write us up some sample motions, and so John Baer was asked to chair the entire, and he did a terrific job.
I think he did a good job.
He kept that thing moving, kept it going. I could not have kept up with the way he did it, so it was terrific. And Senator Salazar felt much the same way, I believe, because he asked him to take over his part of it. So he's going to chair the whole thing. Well, the chairman cannot make motions.
Right.
Therefore, he had a number of motions that he wanted made, and he passed those out. And that was basically what that was. But the other thing is, all of his agencies are the first 4 or 5 that come up. And so he sent those out. So we kind of got a sense of the rhythm and how to do it. And by the time it got to our agencies, we're all following our own spreadsheet where we kept track of everybody's
Right,
stuff.
all your stuff. So by your agencies, what you mean is...
Yeah. We are every individual on that committee.
It's okay. I'm in possession of all the words today, so
Good.
I'll just hand them out to you.
Good. Well, why don't you just hand me a script?
No, that's John's job.
So, he told me what to say here. You can tell. No, every individual on that committee, because there are like 80 different agencies. So we split it up and we each take a dozen or so. And nobody can master all of those agencies and stay
There's
on top
no
of
way.
everything.
You just don't
And it
have
changes quickly too. You know, there might be 2 or 3 meetings going on at the same time with behind the scenes that you can't see.
Well, and if you've never watched anything in the Wyoming legislature, first, we don't, and I hope everybody knows this, but if you don't, we don't have a full-time legislature. We have what is called we have one of the only
We do.
Well, okay, so let me just walk through this real quick.
Yeah.
We're one of the only states that have what is called a citizen-led legislature. So we do have professional politicians. They just don't get to work in Cheyenne in the chambers on a continuing basis. So we have one session that's 2 months or 40 working days. And then we have the next session the following year, which is 1 month or 20 working days. And then, in between, you have interim committees. And so first, everybody's probably got a real job anyway, or they're retired and, they decided to pick up this job. Probably turned into a nightmare for them, but, hey.
The most expensive hobby you'll ever love.
Yes, indeed. And so, what Ken is talking about is nobody being a part-time legislator, or frankly, even if I think if you were there full-time, would you be able to handle all of this stuff all at one time? And it is a flurry of activity when you go to the session.
Well,
you guys are going
there are
from
people,
one room to another.
Our LSO helpers, for example, just in appropriations, Don Richards and Elizabeth Martineau, they do a terrific job. They're very, very sharp. They've both been doing this for a long time. They understand this part of it, but that's just the appropriations, the budget side. LSO is split up. They've got people that specialize just like we do.
Yep.
Well,
and think about this. Like, if you're on appropriations, that's probably the only committee that you have. Or, you might have one other, but that's a lot of work.
You might be on a task force or something.
Some smaller subcommittee or something. But then you have all of the other committees that are happening. And when you start out the day in the session and when they end the day, you'll hear them announce several different committees. And most of them start at like 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m. And so you go to your committee meeting and there's, 4 or 5, maybe 6 bills that you go through if you're lucky. Sometimes it's just one.
Yeah.
And then you go into the session and you debate for a couple of hours. And then you might have lunch where there may be more committee meetings during lunch. And then you have the afternoon session. And then you have evening committee meetings. And then you probably have some off-campus meetings to go to as well. So it is a flurry of activity, and nobody can keep up with it.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of people are on a couple of committees. So, for example, Transportation Committee might be Tuesday and Thursday mornings.
Sure.
And maybe they're on corporations, and that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. That sort of thing. When they make the announcements at the end of the day, at the middle of the day before we break for lunch, the default is appropriations will be working, and sometimes we get a little time off. But a lot of times when we're not officially there, we're up there working. So
it's super busy. And I think my point in this whole thing is with all of these different agencies, and we have a whole boatload of them. They split them up between committee members, and so no one person is an expert on all things. Though I suppose by the end of things, you got a pretty good handle of what's going on.
Yeah, by the time we got through John's agencies, which are the first 5, and then he has some others
Right.
down the list. But by the time we got through them, we had it down. We knew what to say and whatnot. We all knew because we discussed what our motions were going to be, and went from there.
So I do have a question, though. Like, on your way home, how long does it take you to remove the marionette strings from your hands and arms where Lex Luthor has been controlling them?
It doesn't take any time at all because there are no strings on me.
All right. So days like today, it's kind of a slow news day. There's a couple of stories that are out there. But other than that, I mean, it's the same stuff going on. Minnesota's still burning down. The governor and the mayor of Minneapolis, they're still fighting ICE. And I mean, it's been the same stuff. And I do have a couple of pieces in here that we'll get to in the program. And one of those is we have pretty definitive evidence of who is funding these operations. And so we'll get to that a little bit later on in the program. But I thought today we would start out with, what is perhaps the stereotypic example of why the human race is kind of stupid. From Fox News, Georgia assistant principal accused of stealing nearly $1,000 in Walmart merchandise at the self-checkout line. Now, I don't know what you make in Georgia if you're an assistant principal, but I can compare it because we spend a crap load of money on administration in Wyoming, in school administration. And so I would think that if you're the assistant principal, you're making probably around $100,000 a year. So first question, why is it that you would need to steal $1,000 worth of Walmart stuff? And I mean, I realize prices are going up, but $1,000 at Walmart?
Cheap thrill.
Could be. Well, let me just show you who is doing the cheap thrilling. Let's see here. Here we go. So here is the suspect in question.
She looks quite suspect.
She does. But, I mean, and isn't it funny how people look differently in their mugshot? Oh, I got caught. Bummer.
I was just wondering if that was a beer or whether she was headed to the doctor's office.
Well, I don't know, because she doesn't look quite the same in her mugshot picture. So from Fox News, and I quote, Courtney Janelle Shaw was placed on administrative leave after the Cherokee County authorities linked her to multiple Walmart thefts. An assistant principal at the Georgia Elementary School was arrested last Monday after being linked to a series of Walmart shoplifting incidents worth roughly $1,000 in merchandise, and was taken using a discrete stacking method at self-checkout kiosks. I didn't know this was a thing, so I'm thoroughly interested here. Courtney Janelle Shaw, 47, was reportedly caught on camera placing multiple items on top of one another and scanning only one before she exited the store. She was booked into the Cherokee County Jail, charged with one felony count of shoplifting, and released later on that day on a $4,800 bond. Actually, $4,875 bond. Why not just round it up to $5,000? I mean, was the judge bored that day? No, your bond is $4,582.29.
He didn't want to sound like he was just grabbing a number out of his hat.
Fair enough.
We've calculated down to the
penny what your bail should be.
No, can't do it to the penny. They don't make those anymore.
Oh, that's true. We stopped making them. Authorities reportedly said that Shaw stole 98 items, totaling $943. Oh, and 97 cents. Between November and December of last year. Free Home Elementary School in Cherokee. See, there's the problem right there. She works for an outfit that's called Free. Maybe she's not getting paid to be the assistant principal and therefore has to steal. Courtney Shaw was arrested on January 19th. Immediately upon these allegations being reported, the employee was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of internal and law enforcement investigations. Maintaining the safety and security of our students. Yeah, good question. What did she steal from the school? I mean, if you're going to rip Walmart off for $1,000, would you also not be stealing from your students? I mean, I think that nothing is safe that is not nailed down around her. Anyway, makes me wonder, my friends, about the world we live in, and maybe we're just too dumb to govern ourselves. According to the school's website, Shaw joined Freehome Elementary in 2024 as the assistant principal. So she doesn't even teach. So she's free to conduct her criminal activities without encumbrance.
So it reminds me, this is something that can happen in Wyoming.
Yes. Well, that can happen too.
Well,
School districts
no,
stealing from taxpayers.
that's not where I was going. When I went to Bighorn High School, we had a principal whose initials were AD. I won't bring it any farther.
Okay.
He lost his job for stealing a weed whacker from the hardware store. And it's kind of a funny story because he went into the hardware store, and it was one of those deals where he was waiting forever and ever. And I don't know what was going on at the cash register, but somebody was, and finally he just got frustrated and walked out with it.
With the weed whacker.
And they busted him, and he lost his job.
Yeah, weird. See, and criminals, I guess criminals by their very nature are just kind of dumb. Though, I mean, there are some criminals out there that, mafia types that maybe are kind of smart.
AD wasn't dumb by any means.
Well, he stole a weed whacker.
Well, I think, and maybe this is part of what happened. You read out stories all the time about teacher gets caught in some sort of a sex scandal with a student.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of dumb.
You hear the same things about preachers.
Yeah.
I think maybe for some there might be this idea of the thrill of it's heightened by what if they knew that the principal was actually,
right, trying
maybe
to get
they
away
watched
with it.
too much Batman.
Yeah, it could be.
As a child.
All right. So in other fake, well, that's not really a fake story, but in another fake type story from MSN.com, social media companies face first trial over addiction to their platforms. Now, I don't know what interests me about this one, except that the pervasiveness of social media. And I'm smack dab in the middle of it. Like if you're in the media like I am, you've probably got a half a dozen social media channels, and I mean that's how a lot of people get their news. I read a story or a study not that long ago that something like 48% of people get their news off of social media, which is kind of scary.
Sheridan Media just did a poll.
Did they now?
And they said, where do you get your news? And they listed, CNN, Fox, all the usual suspects.
Social
but they
media
did
down at the
not
bottom.
list Breitbart.
Really?
And they did not list Cowboy State Politics. So I could not
participate in the poll.
participate in the poll. There was no thing for other or
Nothing.
a write-in. Nothing.
Well, that's because they don't consider, Cowboy State Politics to be legitimate. That's why I had to start my own news platform.
I thought you started the platform because of the addictive nature of the same.
I did, and I have put my best efforts forth to make this an addictive program to pay attention to. But I think this is talking about other social media platforms. From MSN.com, multiple social media platforms face a first-of-its-kind trial in a Los Angeles court this week, facing accusations that their platforms are designed to be harmfully addictive. The landmark case centers around claims from a 19-year-old, identified only as KGM in the lawsuit, who claims she became addicted to social media platforms, which eventually led her to have depression and suicidal thoughts. Meta, owner of Instagram, Facebook, Snap, and others, TikTok, YouTube, were initially slated to be on trial, but settlements with Snap and TikTok were announced for an undisclosed amount of money just before trial, leaving only Meta and YouTube up for potential damages in the case. All right, so what that paragraph tells you is these other companies, Google, who owns YouTube, Snap, TikTok, all these other people, considered this lawsuit to be an annoyance. And so instead of fighting it in court, which would have cost them a tremendous amount of money and lawyers, they just said, you know what, we'll just settle. We're done. We won't admit any wrongdoing, and you just take this money and leave us alone. You find that a lot with school districts. When parents or whomever else sues a school district, often the school district settles the lawsuit just to avoid all the lawyer fees and all that. And a lot of these cases are filed with that in mind, that we'll get them to settle and it'll be cheap and easy money. Evidently, YouTube and Meta are not up for that game, and they're going to trial. Quote, borrowing heavily from behavioral and neurobiological techniques used by slot machines and exploited by the cigarette industry, defendants deliberately embedded their products an array of design features aimed at maximizing youth engagement to drive advertising revenue, the lawsuit said, per the Associated Press. Jury selection in their social media addiction trial comes less than a week after the Iowa Supreme Court allowed a lawsuit filed by the state's attorneys general to proceed against TikTok. That lawsuit alleges that the social media platform misrepresented the amount of inappropriate videos it showed to children in violation of the state's Consumer Fraud Act. Okay, so you remember, Ken, when it was there was that big lawsuit against, was it R.J. Reynolds? Whichever company owns Camel. And it was all over the Joe Camel cartoon figure. You remember that?
Yeah. There was even there were some people over in Campbell County that at that time wanted to remove the camel as the Campbell County mascot.
Really?
Yeah, associated with that.
That's ridiculous.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah, pretty weird. By the way, you know why the Campbell County's high school's mascot is the camel? Because they found camels in Campbell County. Believe it or not, I'm, weird. This whole how the earth changes thing, it just doesn't happen overnight. And that's why you see rhinoceroses being dug up in Wyoming. And
our good buddy Kim Love used to have camels.
Yeah, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Does he still have them? Notice Ken doesn't want to answer that question. But so here's the question.
I don't know if he still has them. I just know he used to.
Well, he might now. I mean, he can probably have anything he wants, maybe, depending on where he's at. So is social media addictive?
Is this a slow news day or not?
Yes, it is a slow news day. So question, though, serious question. Do we think that social media companies are addictive? Or social media platforms, I should say. The company itself, probably not addictive. I don't know. I mean, I think that there is some ingenious advertising being used there. And by ingenious, I don't mean to say that I like it. Because you go search for something on Google or, we pull up another web browser and search for something, and you go back to Facebook, an ad for what you just looked at is going to be in your Facebook feed. So, I mean, definitely an integrated advertising platform. But the question is, could we consider things that you read or view to be addictive? I mean, years ago, there was, where was it? I think it was Disney that was accused of embedding different images in their cartoons, and it was like some sort of subliminal messaging type thing. I don't know that it was ever proven, but
well, I can prove it.
Okay, well,
I have one of the VHS tapes that
the Little Mermaid one.
Yes, and it is quite clearly
a penis on the front of it.
It's interesting. So you talk about addictive and kind of go down this road. Most people would say that porn very quickly becomes addictive.
Oh, I think that's a certainty. Let's see here, addictive. So define addictive. So if we go to Google and type, of course, Google is probably a little bit biased in this sense. But anyway, here's what they say about addictive. Causing or likely to cause someone. Okay.
Where's your 1848?
It's an 1828, and it was too heavy to carry to the studio this morning.
Good excuse.
Let's see. What is an addiction? The fact or condition of, this is just a circular argument here. The fact or condition of being addicted. Okay, and then you look at addicted.
Webster would never do that. You don't use the word in the definition of the word.
Okay, here we go. Addicted, physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring adverse effects. And so if you're addicted to alcohol and you stop drinking alcohol, you're probably going to go through some withdrawal symptoms because you are physically dependent upon that substance. So then the question is, can a social media platform fit within the definition of addicted? Can you become physically dependent upon it? I don't know. I think that that's a stretch, though. If you walk into any restaurant or, I don't often go into bars, but, you walk into a bar and you see this most of the time. People on their cell phone.
You got a group of 8 people at a table. I'm as guilty as anybody. You go and you sit in there, and half of the people are
On their phone.
focused on their phone.
No, honey, I'll be home in a minute. No, really, I promise. There's no other women here. So I don't know. I think this is an interesting case, and I'll try to keep my eyes peeled on it, just to see what happens, because I don't know. I mean, I think that you can be addicted to social media. I don't know that there's a physical dependence, but certainly if you can be addicted to porn, you can be addicted to social media. And think about this, right? There is, I'm sure that there's a dopamine release when you get 10,000 likes on a picture.
Well, there's a facet of addiction that has to do with physical habit. And I've talked to a lot of people who, for example, try to give up smoking and don't really have a problem until they find themselves in a particular situation, like they go and sit down at a bar or something. And then
Right. It's
there's
environmental.
there's that trigger in there that goes. It's a fascinating subject for somebody who has more time than I.
Well, like I said, slow news day. But it is not a slow news day on the opinion section of the Cowboy. The year Wyoming sold its soul. And you know what? I just looked at the clock. Let's go ahead and take a break from the inanity of our discussion, and we'll come back and talk about Tom Lubnow.
I may never come back.
Mute the microphones. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program. Kent, did you know that we sold our soul? That we're no longer in possession of it. It is gone, and we sold it.
I will have comments on that after you let people know what we're talking about.
Fair enough. Tom
But
Lubnow.
the fact that he thinks we sold our soul is why I gave up my retirement.
Yes. So Tom Lubnow in the pages of the screens of the Cowpie, he says that Wyoming just sold our soul. Now let me just read you the first opening paragraphs because I've got a lot to say in the first couple of sentences here. So here's how he begins it. The year 2024 may go down as the year Wyoming sold its soul. Getting our soul back is going to take all of us. last legislative election wasn't just another hard-fought cycle. It marked a turning point. Dark money flooded Wyoming, and it worked. The result was a legislature that looks and behaves very differently than past iterations that sought to safeguard Wyoming's future. A couple of examples out of many tell the story. A political action committee called Make Liberty Win poured $405,000 into Wyoming legislative races. It claimed to be a no-compromise conservative force, operating, at least on paper, without coordination with individual campaigns. Stop right there. What Lubnow is failing to tell you is that the left operates in exactly the same way. Last election, Wyoming was flooded with money from Americans for Prosperity. They turned out to support just about every redcoat candidate that Tom Lubnow, I'm sure, would approve of. And let me just give you some numbers that are pretty close. Of course, a lot of this is hard to nail down because federal political action committees don't have to report their direct expenditures in Wyoming. So a lot of this is just kind of back of the envelope math. But I can tell you, in the Senate District 21 race, there was at least $90,000 that was dumped into that race by just one candidate, by Barry Crago. And here's how I came up with that number. All of the mailers that he sent out go countywide, and you figure up how much it costs you to send out one of those mailers. And Ken, you could probably answer the question. How much does it cost to send out a countywide mailer?
Yep, that's a great question. Countywide, at least $4,000.
At least $4,000.
Yeah.
Your district probably what, $2,500?
I didn't do those. I was in my district, and so basically what I would do is target Republicans.
Sure.
In this particular district, so it was a lot smaller thing than that, and the Senate candidate has to cover a lot more ground.
Yeah.
So it varies. It frankly would be hard for me to put a solid number on.
Yeah. So basically, what I did is I just took a round number. I think I used $5,000 for one of those mailers, and then multiplied it by 2 because there's two Senate districts, and so what I was trying to figure out is how much money was spent in Sheridan County, and so because there were multiple candidates being supported by that one organization, Americans for Prosperity. And in the one race, it was like $80-some thousand that I came up with. Now, if you look at statewide, I can't remember the exact total of candidates that Americans for Prosperity supported, but it was at least 10. And then you do the math, and you're probably going to come up with a number that's as equal to or in excess of that $405,000. Now, it is absolutely true that those Make Liberty Win, really, they were the group that sent out mailers that were incorrect, that had, names attached with the wrong picture, and they just really weren't, they weren't accurate at all. And you could tell by reading them that they hadn't contacted anybody. They just, made their own mailer and then sent it out. But to just say that it is only the right that is using dark money is absolutely not true. The left candidates, liberal, red-coated Republicans, used Americans for Prosperity, and they dumped at least that amount of money. Now, they reported on their own that they spent $395,000. But that doesn't count all the other individual PACs in the state.
I can really only speak for my own campaign, but in each one of my campaigns, and there have been 3, I personally knew over 90% of the donors.
Yeah.
Most of them, like my mom, and other people who are around the state. Very little out-of-state money. I did have. I got a friend down in Colorado that sent me a couple $100. Got a friend in Kansas sent me a couple $100. Some things like that. But these are people that I know that know me for a long time.
Right.
I can only answer for me, but all of those accusations do not apply to me, nor do the other accusations about somebody from out of state coming in and trying to change things.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in your second election, your opponent, and I think that he got money from Mark Gordon, but he was independently wealthy anyway, and they spent right at $100,000 trying to beat you. So there's a ton of money on both sides. And for Tom Lubnow to say that is only the right, it's really kind of ridiculous. Let's see here. He continues. In a Laramie primary, mailers promoting candidate Keith Kennedy featured a photograph of a completely different Keith Kennedy. That's what I was referring to earlier, a man who lives in Virginia and was not running for office. They also declared him as the only 100% pro-gun candidate, a claim that baffled his opponent, Senator Gary Crum, who turned out to be a giant redcoat. That guy voted with the Democrats almost as much as Eric Barlow. Who's a lifelong hunter, concealed carry holder, and member of the local rifle range. That doesn't mean he's not a redcoat. Similar mailers appeared across the state. Lubnow says the results are unmistakable. Candidates backed by Make Liberty Win overwhelmingly aligned themselves with the Freedom Caucus once elected. There is a nearly direct correlation between Make Liberty Win endorsed candidates and those elected legislators who vote in alignment with the Freedom Caucus. Candidates supported by Make Liberty Win include, and then he gives a list of them, Agent 29, you're on that list. They also included candidates Tina Clifford, Terry Ellison, Bob Hendry. Bob Hendry was defeated in Natrona County, and he is definitely not a conservative. George Dunlap, Tom Olmsted, Bryce Reith, Kathy Russell, and Tammy Young. Meanwhile, incumbents targeted by opposition mailers were swept aside, with only a handful surviving the onslaught. That is not true at all. I have a stack of mailers from Barry Crago, almost all of which are Americans for Prosperity. So, I mean, the vast majority of what Tom Lubnow is saying here, at the very least, can be applied to both sides. At the very worst, it's the left that absolutely outdid conservatives. Let's see here. Chuck Gray. Let's see here. Okay, whether true or not, it's quoting now. It's fair to wonder whether the same unseen donors who funded the campaigns are now shaping the legislative agenda, an agenda that often seems designed to break Wyoming rather than build it. Well, of course, Tom Lubnow thinks that conservatives are breaking the state because he spent his legislative career trying to set up coffee cans and ways that his pals can make money and spend tax dollars.
That's where I want to step in.
Please do.
If the people that say that we are destroying the state, that we're breaking the state, what they're actually talking about is the system, frankly, of corruption that they built, where you talk about dark money. Try to follow how money flows through state government.
Oh, boy.
So this whole concept that we came in to take over Wyoming and change it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's exactly the opposite. People in Wyoming who are genuinely conservative began to wake up and realize, and COVID was a trigger for that, when the governor came up and said, you can't go to church. Wait a minute, who do you think you are? And they started paying attention. And then, the cameras in there began to expose what was going on. And they said, we can't have this. And within a few short years, we took over the House.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means that Wyoming rejected the Wyoming, or what they think is Wyoming, and
what they called the Wyoming Caucus.
That's what broke them. But they can't say that, because if you offend the people of Wyoming who actually did this, then you offend anybody who might be snookered into voting for you down the road.
Well, since
they got to put up a straw man and make that the bad person.
Well, since we're talking about campaign financing, let's talk about what was referred to as the Wyoming Caucus. So these were the liberal, red-coated Republicans that formed their own caucus. The term was coined by Barry Crago on the floor of the House of Representatives. They all donated to it themselves. So if you look at the campaign donations, Clark Stith, all of them, Albert Summers, all of the liberal Republicans donated to that caucus. And they got a tremendous amount of donations from, people who are very left-leaning in the state. So when we're talking about campaign financing, you need to be fair on both sides. Do conservatives get a lot of money from big conservative organizations? Some of them do, not all of them.
Yeah, I don't.
Your first race, you won it spending what, $12,000?
Yeah, and I've never spent much more than that, maybe 15. Yeah. And virtually all of the money that I bring into my campaigns has come from people within the state.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and
Virtually
it's
all of it.
so what Tom is trying to do, what Love Now is trying to do, is to paint with a broad brush to say that all of these people are the same and they're all make liberty win. Which the truth is, most of them had nothing to do
Yeah.
with make liberty
He's
win.
also putting up a straw man.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's make liberty win bad. They're terrible, and therefore anybody that they supported is bad. When there's probably no connection between them. But anyway, it's more leftist dribble from Tom Lubnow, and the question is that he refuses to answer is that, Tom, if there are problems that exist in this state, why did you absolutely do nothing to solve them when you were the Speaker of the House?
It's people like him and the government that they set up within this state, which is vastly oversized for the population. They're the reason I'm here.
Yes.
If they had done things the way that my constituents want me to do it, I would have been able to be fly fishing.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the election returns right after COVID, and I mean, a lot of people were really angry at COVID, but there is one session of the legislature actually it was in the House of Representatives, and I don't remember the date. I need to go find it for you so you can watch, but I believe it was in the morning, and it is, if you want a treasure trove of everything that the Redcoats think about you, that's it. That's the same session in which Bob Nicholas said, "This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated," where Lloyd Larson said, "I don't care if it hurts. We're going to jam that swab up your nose." I mean, there's some really nasty stuff in there. And, because the cameras existed in the legislature then, because the legislature had to install them, there's no way you could let a whole bunch of people in the Capitol, or so we were told by the governor.
That was the impetus. All of that collectively was the impetus for me running in the first place. This has just gotten out of hand. Somebody's got to do something.
Yes. I mean, you were able to see it with your own eyes. And it's one thing to, I remember one of the first episodes I did that went viral. I was actually headed down to the special session, and I couldn't figure out why all of these Republicans were voting against fighting the mandates coming from Washington, D.C. And the special session I'm referring to was all about the vaccine mandate. And so I started looking into all of the campaign financing for everybody. And wouldn't you know that every single person that voted against having a special session to deal with Biden's federal mandates took money from Pfizer and or the Wyoming medical lobby, every single one of them. And so in the episode, it's actually, I thought it was kind of funny, but I named names and I went right down the list. Well, right after I hit publish on the episode, I got in my car and I was going to drive to Cheyenne to go watch the special session. I got about to Douglas, I think, and I started getting phone calls. Is this for real? Is this the truth? And I'm like, go look it up yourself. Of course it's the truth. And I walk into the Capitol building, and the first legislator I ran into, I didn't even know his name. I mean, it was the first actual session that I had sat through. And I looked down at his name tag, and I'm like, and he says, you made it sound like I'm being bought off. And my reply was, well, if you hadn't taken money from Pfizer, I wouldn't have to do that now, would I? But it was eye-opening. And that was the first episode I did that actually went like super viral. And because a lot of people that were listening had no idea that a lot of their elected officials were just like Tom Lubnow and, big government, very, very liberal people who just happened to run as Republicans. And so, like Ken said, when the mask was pulled off, a lot of people realized what was going on, and they decided that they had to do something. And so they ran for office. And it just so happens that this Make Liberty Win is, appreciated what they were doing. Let's see here.
I need to throw this out.
Okay, go for it.
I'm listed, even though I have 3 times requested that I be taken off their list, as a member of Hazlitt. And Hazlitt is affiliated with the YAL and the group that you're talking about. And at one point, another Wyoming legislator, they were asking for, who can we talk to, because they wanted
Right.
to be able to talk to people on the ground. And my name came up. So they listed me as a Hazlitt member. They called me and they asked my opinion on a number of things, and then they asked my opinion on various candidates. And I told them what I thought. And they went pretty much the other way.
Yeah.
And I told them when they came back and started talking to them, I said, I'm done with you. I think I'm still listed
I'm sure you
on,
are. I mean,
on that list.
how do you think Tom Lovenow got your name?
Yeah. Um, that's very infuriating as well, because you're a part-time legislator. You're trying to do your job. You don't feel like you ought to have to go police the internet everywhere to make sure that.
You do.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, man, don't believe everything you see or read.
Well, in your case, I mean you should double down on that one, because you're the guy that's got
Well, I
selectively edited videos out there.
I did when the Hazlitt folks, the YAL people, called me the last time, and I still get their emails almost every day. Yeah. When they called me, I said, "Why would I want to talk to you?" I said, "I spent half of the campaign, it felt like, going out and making excuses or trying to explain what might have happened with your flyers
Why
that
you
came
screwed
out with,
everything
yeah,
up.
everything was a mess. I want nothing to do with you."
Right.
But it is.
Well, I mean, it is what it is, and there's not a lot that you can do about it. And obviously, they don't pay attention to what you tell them or what you say.
No, none of my suggestions went anywhere.
Yeah. All right. So, in a follow-up to a story we did yesterday, this one, Ken, I think this should infuriate you too, because it really kind of ticked me off.
Oh,
It's
great.
it's from Breitbart News. President Trump on Alex Pretty. Listen to this. "I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun." End quote. Here's what Breitbart says. President Trump Yeah.
So we kind of talked about that yesterday, and I told you some things that Trump said tell me he's not of the same mindset, at least in the Second Amendment, that you and I are.
No, definitely not. Here's what Breitbart says. President Trump described Alex Pretty's death as terrible during an interview Tuesday on Fox News' The Will Cain Show, but made clear that he didn't like the fact that Pretty was carrying a gun. Trump said, quote, "I think the whole thing was terrible. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him." He added, quote, "No one knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible." Trump also said on January 7th, the incident in which a federal agent shot and killed Renee Good after she allegedly drove her vehicle into him, it was terrible. Pretty was allegedly carrying a Sig Sauer AXG combat pistol, which ships with a 21-round magazine. Here you go. Here is that pistol, or what they say is that pistol. Pretty nice gun. I kind of wish I had one. But if you own that firearm, you are not a casual gun owner. I mean, this is not the firearm that everybody is going to go buy. I mean, it's a nice weapon. Sig Sauer, they're nice, and they're pretty expensive too. Go ahead.
It's not a Glock 19.
Not to say anything bad about Glocks. I hate them. I've never had one.
I do too. They feel like a brick.
I know. That's what I call them, the block. But anyway, it's an expensive firearm, and you don't have one unless you're kind of a serious shooter. Earlier on Tuesday, the New York Post reported that Pretty had suffered a broken rib in a violent confrontation with agents a week before, the confrontation in which he was killed. CNN noted that the source said federal immigration officials documented details about Alex Pretty before he was shot. And it's known if he came to federal immigration officials' attention before the confrontation. Now, just so happens, I've got a little video of that one. I think it's this one right here. Yeah. So go ahead and show my screen. So from the Liberty Daily, and this guy right here, that's Alex Pretty. And there's a video, and I hate showing this because here we go. Okay, so let's just play this. Now here, in this video, you can see Alex Pretty. He's standing there. Now try to keep your eyes on him.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Pretty interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th, our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles.
Ooh, there's a good one.
When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground.
Okay, so if you do that to a police officer, you're getting arrested. Like you do not pass go, do not collect $200, go directly to jail. And if you're going to fight back against a police officer, you're definitely going to jail. There's no question about it.
I'm being repressed.
Yeah, help, I'm being repressed. We need that soundbite as well. But this Alex Pretty guy, he has a history of confrontations with the police. And, it's not to say that any of his past behavior, justified what happened. But when you're going to fight with police, and like I said, in the video where he was shot, I couldn't tell who pulled the gun, but he was obviously fighting with police. And, it's a bad situation like Trump said. However, all of that being said, he absolutely had a right to carry his firearm. And in Minnesota, from what I understand, he had a concealed weapons permit. Not that the Constitution says you have to have that. It doesn't. But he had a right to be carrying a gun, and I completely disagree with President Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if he had a gun or not. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. We all have constitutional rights. Now, I do think it's interesting that the news media the leftist news media is now all in favor of the Second Amendment. I think that's fascinating. That's the story we covered yesterday. But when the president comes out and says, well, I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun, fine, but that's his constitutional right, period. It applies to everybody or it applies to no one. That's the way that it has to be. And, and these are things that, and this is another thing that's kind of starting to irritate me a little bit, Ken, is that there are people that are definitely in support of President Trump, and that anything that he does, they'll be behind him. Well, you should criticize all politicians. In fact, yesterday I criticized you. Well, you're my representative, and you're also my co-host.
Well, you have every right to be wrong now and then. That's why you're only like 98%.
And
right?
The views on this program are documented to be right, and while they may not reflect the views of the co-host or this producer, they should.
That's right. People don't know this because we weren't on the air, but yesterday, I keep leaving that other picture up, and then it looks silly. Sorry. Anyway, you said that's something I don't like, and I said, well, you're wrong.
And then we proceeded
and you are.
No, I'm not. But, you should question your elected representatives from all levels of government. Everything down from the city council or everything up from the city council, school board members, everything. You should question all of them. And you shouldn't have blind allegiance to anybody.
You also shouldn't have blind hatred or blind objection to Donald Trump, the Trump derangement syndrome. And here in Wyoming, the opposition is trying to create a Freedom Caucus derangement syndrome.
Oh, it
doesn't matter what somebody from the Freedom Caucus comes up with. You've got to.
It's automatically bad.
You got to be opposed.
But the way that you combat that is you say, so give me an example. What is it? What is it that they've done?
I've done that many times.
Yeah, and hardly any of them. They don't have any specifics. They can't tell you what policies. They don't ask them about an election bill or the ESA bill or anything.
If they give you specifics, they're spouting a couple of headlines or a couple of talking points that they heard somebody else give. Anybody that has really watched it very seldom have any issues with them.
Yeah, exactly right. If you know what the policies that the Freedom Caucus has been working on, you'd probably be in favor of them.
Well, people like Gail Simmons, Tom Lubnow.
They'll never be in favor of it.
No, they are trying to put back the system that they claim is Wyoming, that they say we're trying to tear down.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
trying to tear that down because it's not Wyoming.
No, I mean, it's a system that allows graft and widespread graft. And we've got a story that we're working on for the Open Range Record that is a perfect example of that. And it is, we had a call last night with the journalist that's working on it, and we were trying to pare it down because it really was like an onion. Like we're trying to say, well, okay, just in this particular situation, here's what's happening. And then the question was, well, wait a minute, because this person's involved and this person's involved and this person gave money. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. Well, that's the system that Tom Lubnow and Steve Harshman and, all the redcoats that have been in power for 30, 40 years have created. And it's a system that doesn't benefit you. It benefits them. It benefits the folks at the very top, which is why when your name is Eric Barlow, well, then you can manufacture a way to get public money to help out your own private interest. That's a little hint about what's coming, Eric. But anyway, I mean, it's an amazing situation, and the rhetoric that comes from the left, both critical of the right and Donald Trump, and the reverse. I mean, you shouldn't take anything, at face value. I mean, you should always investigate it, which is why when things like this with Donald Trump that I really disagree with come out, well, you got to question them. Let's go ahead and take our next break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Now, you got to leave some little spot there where you could possibly, on some rare occasion, make a mistake, but it just doesn't happen all that often here.
Did happen yesterday.
No, it didn't. It didn't. I was right on that one. You just haven't come around to my way of thinking yet. So almost all of the protests that are so-called protests that are happening in Minnesota are not protests at all. They are manufactured, they're ginned up, and they're being paid for by some of the usual suspects. Now there's a great piece on glenbeck.com right now, and it's entitled "Minnesota Group Pushes Borderless Revolution, Backs Terror Allies and Violence Against ICE," and you could add on that title, "and the United States." Here's how it starts out. The nonprofit Marrow Institute and Glenbeck.com have discovered that one of the key groups involved in the Minnesota unrest is Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, or MIRAC. And they have a vivid history of extremism that includes opposing all borders, denying America's right to exist, and belonging to pro-terror coalitions, and indirectly inciting violence and criminality. American civil society can handle a healthy debate about immigration enforcement, policy, and controversies in Minnesota. But make no mistake about it, these groups are supporting violence as a rejection of that discussion. Their goal is not to work within civil society and strengthen America. Their goal is to seize civil society, overthrow the system, empower our adversaries, and deploy the same rhetorical and political strategies that supporters of Hamas used so successfully against the U.S. and especially law enforcement. Now, MIRAC appears on the Minnesota Community Response Resources list, circulated in signal chats and used to organize against ICE. Among the listed tasks is to, quote, train up community members in rapid response and intervention. Per its website, MIRAC's agenda is ending any type of immigration enforcement, ultimately overthrowing the U.S. government and assisting foreign adversaries in defeating the West and creating a borderless world. Now, a lot of that sounds to be, pretty hyperbolic. Most of us look at that and say, really, they want to overthrow the U.S. government? But a lot of these folks really do. It is completely the Cloward Piven strategy of bottom up, top down, and inside out. And what I mean by that is you get the folks at the bottom to rise up, riot in the streets, and so that there is no response that can come from the authorities then to clamp down on it. And when that happens, then the whole situation explodes. Now, let me give you just a little quick flavor of what this MIRAC group disseminates. All right, here you go. There's two of them. So killer ICE off our streets, demand justice for our martyrs. And you see the other one to the right. It says, dangerous situation, extreme escalation, chemical irritants, and law enforcement presence. And this is stuff and here's another one, too. You'll like this one. ICE out of Minnesota. And you'll notice I had to kind of blur out the word at the bottom. But this is the kind of stuff that this MIRAC group is disseminating on social media. And so the piece in glenbeck.com goes on. Here's excerpts from MIRAC's website. We fight for legalization of all, an end to immigration raids and deportations, an end to the anti-immigrant laws, and full equality in all areas of life. We're in solidarity with popular movements in our countries to oppose U.S. intervention in other countries. And we see the U.S. immigration system and criminal justice system as fundamentally unjust, racist, and white supremacist. Much like Minnesota's ICE Watch, which was recently exposed, MIRAC often deploys softer language to describe its aims and tactics, but it's only the softer language that is used when it comes to them being exposed in the media, like on their website and their forward-facing information. When it comes to social media, you see the post that I showed you just a minute ago. Now, I was sent a video yesterday by Agent 29 who it's of a paid protester, and he says absolutely the people in the streets are being paid. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit of what he says.
A police officer was not a reward that was worth the risk.
Oh, wait a minute. We got to rewind. Hold on.
This is me, union organizer, agitator, paid. So I know a little bit about this. When the buses start coming in, it's because they're paid. When they have signs already made, this was already determined in a meeting room. The money has to get cleared. That's how you get it done. I went into buildings I yelled. I knew exactly how to get a company mad. I knew how to bring attention to my union and to bring attention negatively to the people that I was picketing. I was a pro at this. I won awards for this. What I'm seeing out on the streets is paid protesting, but they're doing one thing different than I did. My picture was in Midtown Manhattan's precinct on the wall. So when I threw a rally, they came and said, hey, cue ball, we know it's you. Don't start no trouble. And you know what I never did? I never started trouble.
All right.
I made noise, but
All right, so obviously the guy is, he's part of a union, and he's, a union organizer, and we've long known in this country that unions are behind a lot of this stuff. But one of the first giveaways that none of this is really organic is all of the professionally made signs. When you see a protest erupt and they've got pre-printed signs, that's a pretty good indication that somebody's paying for it. So the question is, who is actually paying for this? And it's a long list of people that are funneling money to this MIRAC group. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is linked to the Chinese Communist Party, Twin Cities Coalition for Justice, National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and a lot of it is funded by the Council for American and Islamic Relations. Now, I've been telling you for a long time that whenever you hear the phrase the Red-Green Alliance, what that refers to as Islamists and communists getting together and, trying to sew up or shore up, I guess, support for whatever cause they're advocating for. And a lot of their money comes, I'm looking for it here, but in the piece, it says that a lot of their money comes from people like George Soros's Open Society Institute and other Marxist organizations. But it's a laundry list of the same type of people that organized the No Kings protest. Though it's interesting, though, one name that is absent, curiously absent, if you ask me, from this whole thing is the Democrat Party. So with the No Kings protests, those were paid for, at least in part, by the Democrat Party, the DNC. But in this one, through all the articles I've looked at, and I've got a lot of them here, I haven't seen any reference to the Democrats, though, they're Democrats, so, they're probably involved somewhere. It's just they haven't been found yet. It's like, it's like in Wyoming. If there's a protest happening somewhere, that the Democrats are behind it somewhere. You just have to find them. So here's another piece, and this one is from justthenews.com. Quote, and it's entitled, Bring This Country to a Halt. Linda Sarsour and the Singham Network. Linda Sarsour is the head of the Council of American Islamic Relations, or CARE. Students vow nationwide anti-ICE showdown. So it is not just constrained to Minnesota or Minneapolis. This is one that they would like to see protests erupt just about everywhere. They use social media as an organizing tool. But again, in this piece, it also points to that this is entirely organized, that none of this is organic, and that there's some pretty serious funding behind them, namely the Open Society, CARE, and it's a laundry list. So anyway, none of it's organic, all of it's fake news, AstroTurf, and it's all been ginned up. Now, here's a piece from Breitbart, which I find particularly disturbing. ICE agents and their families face an 8,000% increase in death threats. From Breitbart News, and I quote, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents tasked by Congress to carry out federal immigration law are facing an unprecedented increase in death threats against themselves and their families. This week, ICE officials revealed the extent to which agents are being threatened by Abolish ICE sympathizers, detailing an 8,000% increase in death threats. In one recent threat, officials said a man left a voicemail on the ICE agent's phone in which he called him an effing racist fascist pig and pleaded with him to kill himself, as well as making other threats against an agent's wife. Quote, I hope your wife dies. I hope your mom and dad die, the man said in the voicemail. I hope you get hit by a bus. I hope you're paralyzed and your wife leaves you and starts getting effed by other people every day. You're a traitor to the American people. You should kill yourself. And it goes on and on and on. But it is not just law enforcement. Though, I mean, there's definitely an increase there. It is with all people on, that we tend to disagree with. And there was a piece put out by the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, and it was voicemails that have been left for Representative John Baer. Just horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. And, Ken, you've had the same stuff, and I wish we could play those voice messages for you, but it would just be a long string of bleeps.
It's not really necessary to play them. You just let your imagination run wild, and
you'd be right.
Yeah, but I made comments yesterday, and it wears on you.
It does.
It doesn't matter how tough you are. If you're the one that puts yourself at the head of the point of the spear, and these ICE agents, they're definitely doing that right now. And you got to pray for them.
Absolutely.
They're trying to do the right thing, but you look at it and they look around and they say, I like my job. I feel good about what I'm doing, but
at some point, and to a lesser degree, I've had some of this stuff happen to me. But at some point, you just have to say, why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with this crap? I would much rather be fishing. I mean, I get that. I get to that point sometimes.
But that's one of the reasons that I joined the Freedom Caucus, is they were up there taking the flack.
Yeah.
And I believe in the same things that they do. They believe in the same things that I do. We work together all the time. And the more of us that stand up together, the easier it is to stand together. And it's like a combat situation. It's like a battle. And on the other side, I just don't think we're the nasty kind of bullies. We do some.
Some of us
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But much more frequently, it appears to me, of course, I'm probably biased in the situation, coming from the other side.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's and again, it depends upon your perspective, right? From our perspective, yes, it appears that most of it is coming from the left. But the truth is, I have seen some pretty nasty stuff coming from alleged conservatives as well. But it doesn't just stop at social media or or activists on the street or against law enforcement officers. Ken, go ahead and play the soundbite that I think it says Rick Wilson, Stephen Miller. Play that one. Uh-oh, not hearing it.
When Stephen Miller goes out and calls a guy who was, by every account so far, who never had a legal problem, had a concealed carry permit, had a gun permit in Minnesota. He was a nurse. He was nice to his neighbors. And you know what? Stephen Miller went out and called him a domestic terrorist, claiming he was trying to assassinate those ICE agents. I almost tweeted this today, and I know I'll get canceled for saying this. I know I'm going to get in trouble.
Then
I want Stephen Miller to be the number one in the Nuremberg trials when this is done. When this is done, I want Stephen Miller to be the first one who is tried and convicted and dangles. Okay? I want him to be brought before a court of law because he is the sole executive that runs all this DHS ICE stuff.
Okay, so that guy, that is Rick Wilson. Now, Rick Wilson was the campaign manager, pretty high up in the campaign for Connie Mack back in the day, but he's been on PMSNBC a lot. You don't see him very often because he said the other soundbite, and it's the one I think that's called Boomer soundbite. Play that one, Ken.
And obviously it's false. And look, he also knows deep in his heart that Donald Trump couldn't find Ukraine on a map if you had the letter U and a picture of an actual physical crane next to it. He knows that this is, an administration defined by ignorance of the world. And so that's partly him playing to their base and playing to their audience, the credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump, that wants to think that Donald Trump's the smart one and y'all elitists are dumb.
You would lead us with your geography and your maps and your spelling, even though my
Okay, all right, that's enough of that.
Yeah,
so
you're
that
reading.
that soundbite, it's a couple of years old, but it was from Don Lemon's show on CNN. That was their headline nightly news segment where they had Rick Wilson on there. Now he's also the founder of the Lincoln Project, the Never Trumper group, and so what I'm saying is that this overheated, really really nasty rhetoric, it pretty much runs the gamut all the way from on the street with these folks in Minnesota to you calling legislators to your nightly news segment. And the point I'm getting to here is we ought to be able to have a conversation with each other. And if we can't do that, then I mean we're not going to solve anything. We're not going to fix any of the problems for which both sides advocate for. And it's very difficult to sit down in a room and talk to somebody when they referred to you, using the F word or, called you names. For example, Carly Provenza sat right here in the studio, and we had, I think it was a pleasant conversation, but it was only a year or two prior where she posted the meme that suggested that maybe people should shoot conservatives. And so, it is very difficult to have that conversation. But if we don't, we're not going to be able to fix anything, solve anything. It's just going to be two sides shouting at each other with a megaphone.
So, because it's kind of a slow news day, that soundbite brought up an article that I read yesterday that somebody sent to me, and I just texted you that. And maybe over the next few minutes you could see if you could pull that up on your laptop. It's an interesting article. We played the game in the past where I'd play a soundbite or a video for you and get your reaction. You might find that an interesting article. Maybe you can just read it off here.
Yeah, hold on. I'll get there.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
Yeah. That's the first time anybody's ever said that to me.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. Well, that's why we're friends, Ken.
Yeah.
I give you the opportunities that other people don't.
That's right. So basically, the person that sent me this file said, "You have been diagnosed." And here's somebody with just tremendous brilliance, educated beyond all, that looks down at people like me and says, the reason you have a problem is you're just stupid. You're an uneducated twit. And that's kind of the gist of it. So when you find it, maybe just read through there and kind of comment as you go. And if you want, I can throw it up on the screen, or you can just read it either way.
So let's just start out just talking about it. So this is from Jeremy Jones, and he's the executive director of something called the 1224 Club in Casper. And here's how it starts out. Quote, "I'm concerned that miseducation among Wyoming lawmakers could lead to significant missed opportunities for Wyomingites. I say that from personal experience because school was always very difficult for me. I struggled to focus, got frustrated easily, and convinced myself that school and grades weren't important anyway. At the same time, teachers saw potential in me and tried to push me toward it. I rarely followed through. The truth is, I wanted to learn, blah, blah, blah." Let's see here. By their own example, people in recovery, Casper College. Good Lord, this guy goes on. Here we go. "That's why I'm concerned watching Wyoming's Freedom Caucus push for significant cuts to the University of Wyoming, while also discussing cuts to the Wyoming Business Council. These aren't abstract ideas you toss around to see what sticks. They're like pulling the foundation out from under a house and hoping the whole thing stands. I majored in psychology. Obviously, you didn't learn anything. When I went back to college, and one concept that always stuck with me was the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cognitive bias that occurs when people with limited experience or competence in a particular field or social role become overly... All right, so in other words, you're just too stupid, Ken.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I summed it up.
Yeah.
But we haven't been brainwashed through higher learning. And one of the funny things about that is he doesn't know, John Barrett was a naval officer, and in order to get there, he had to go to college.
Yes.
I have some college under my belt. I have some other education as well. Could have, would have, could have. When I graduated,
But don't sell yourself short,
well,
Ken.
when I graduated high school, I had an opportunity at a full ride scholarship to Rapid City School of Mines. I didn't want to do that. But there's just this presumption that these are a bunch of redneck hicks that don't know their head from a hole in the ground, and we shouldn't trust them. They don't know what they're doing. They're just reacting out of spite, against the educational system.
So first, I mean, you're right, yes. But first, he proceeds from a false assumption in that the Wyoming Business Council is the foundation of everything. No, it isn't. In the entire existence of the Wyoming Business Council, our GDP has gone down. How many jobs have they created, Ken? I mean, they're fantastic, right?
One year they spent $50 million and claimed 40 jobs.
40 jobs, $50 million.
Yeah, but that was 2024. But there are arguments on both sides and all that. And trust me, I've sat down with all kinds of people, both with them and without them, and heard all of these things. But they're still the fundamental principle.
Well, this is what I'm getting to, right?
Yeah,
So this guy, he claims to be very, very educated. Okay, maybe he's got a degree, whatever. I know a lot of people that have pieces of paper called driver's licenses that can't drive for crap.
Very educated usually means brainwashed in my view.
Yeah,
and he would use that against me. He would say, that's your problem, is you don't understand education.
Yes, and just because you have a piece of paper that hangs on the wall does not necessarily mean that you learned anything. What I'm saying is you start with a false premise in that, well, these things are the backbone. Okay, well, let's talk about the University of Wyoming. A cut to your budget is not a reduction in the amount of increase. Okay, so largely what you're seeing from the university or from the Appropriations Committee, I'm not saying this is entirely the case, but more often than not, it's a reduction in the amount of the requested increase in the budget. So really, it's not a cut at all.
In the case that he would be referring to with that $40 million, that's basically about 2.5% of their total budget.
Yes, it's 2.5%. There
and
isn't
it's a cut.
Okay, so all right. So that's why I said in most cases. So let's talk about one of those, Wyoming Public Media. That's an organization that we shouldn't be paying for anyway. You can't hold a group accountable if you're being funded by that group. It just doesn't work. And that's the problem with Wyoming Public Media. It has turned into the media arm of the liberal elite and of government. If you want to know why they're never critical of government funding, it's because they operate on government funding. So first, it's a false premise. Secondly, here's what he says. What really troubles me is the idea that reviewing or reforming UW or Business Council spending. It's that many of the most confident lawmakers pushing these cuts have little firsthand experience with higher education, yet are now positioned to shape its future for others.
How does he know?
He doesn't.
He's making assumptions there, and that's part of my point. He don't know what he's talking about.
Right, and the next paragraph proves it. To be clear, quote, some members of the Freedom Caucus do not hold college degrees, but based on publicly available biographies, a significant portion do not, and only about half hold a bachelor's degree or higher. So first, just because you don't have a bachelor's degree does not mean you're not an intelligent person. Again, I know a lot of people with a whole bunch of paper on their wall that are dumb as a post. I know a lot of people that don't have an advanced college degree who are super really intelligent. I know of one of them in particular that has a pretty successful media business that has an associate's degree. I don't need a bachelor's degree to be successful. And secondly, you probably are at a disadvantage if you are entirely steeped in academia, in dealing with real world problems. If you want to know why a lot of the projects for the Wyoming Business Council fail, is you don't have people setting them up that have actually owned a business, that have signed a paycheck. I mean, if you're going to give, what was it, $20 million for the berry company in Laramie, something about growing berries at 7,200 feet might be problematic. But that business didn't stick around for very long at all, and we sunk a ton of taxpayer money into it. The truth is, that's not the place of government. And secondly, the University of Wyoming has a tremendous amount of money. I mean, they have an endowment that is, I don't know what it is, but it's got to be several $100 million, probably close to $1 billion. So why not use some of that money and stop taking taxpayer dollars. But I think the more important underlying thing in this whole piece is essentially he's saying, well, you're just stupid. I mean, that's the entire response of it.
It's the OHA argument. University of Wyoming, sometimes take two land-grant universities within a few miles of each other, basically, which is Colorado State University and the University of Wyoming. They both have very similar budgets, except that UW relies extensively on the state monies.
Mm-hmm.
CSU gets, frankly, by comparison, very little state money. They have to make their money themselves, the publish or perish, milk the sports things for everything that they're worth. And I think one of the problems with the University of Wyoming is they've had it too easy. I think they're spoiled. Everything they want, brand new buildings, whatever like that, it just comes to them. And I think if they had to work a little bit harder, and this is probably going to piss some people off, but I think if they had to work a little bit harder, they'd be a little bit more careful about the course offerings that they have and actually pare it down to ones that make a difference, that mean something and that are saleable rather than
just think about
eco-terrorism or ecofeminism or whatever.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, 3 years now, I think, I did a really big investigation at the University of Wyoming. What I found is they spent $1.7 million on DEI, the DEI office and their Office of Cultural Diversity. $1.7 million on an office that, first, didn't need to exist, and secondly, really disadvantaged people. And Ed Seidel sat right here in this studio, and I mean, he not in these words, but he basically told us, hey, we're doing just fine without that office. But it was $1.7 million that, I mean, you could have done better just flushing it down the toilet.
Or you could buy a Super Bowl commercial.
Or you could buy a Super Bowl commercial.
They did.
I'd still love to know what the return on investment from that.
I asked them that, and of course their answer is, well, it's very, and I'm sure it is, very difficult to measure, but we've seen, and they pointed to some upticks in inquiries and all these other things, but to come up with anything definite. It's similar, for example, with the Department of Health. How much of a return on investment is there with all of these advertises that you put out to eat right or to not smoke a cigarette or to wear your seatbelt or whatever they put out there? Does that really have an effect? And the answer is always, we really don't know.
Well, it's kind of the nature of advertising, right? Unless you have analytics to it, you can't tell who clicked on the ad and if they called. Like advertising on the internet, that's pretty easy to do. You can track how many people responded to a given advertisement. But a television commercial, okay, so it aired during the Super Bowl, and I don't know what the viewership of that Super Bowl was, but a lot of people saw it. And certainly I'm sure that it did increase the amount of inquiries. But the question is, where else could you have spent that $1.7 million, not on a DEI office, and had a much greater effect? How many students could you pay for their tuition, their room board, everything for that $1.7 million? But we spent it on a Super Bowl commercial, which looked really great and awesome publicity, but I don't know that it produced that amount.
I believe it was that return. In that case, I believe it was $2 million for two 30-second commercials.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling. All right, my friends. Well, we've got to run. We've got a lot of stuff going on today. Make sure that you stay tuned to the broadcast. Don't miss the podcast, and don't miss tomorrow's program. We'll have John Baer, Chairman John Baer of the Appropriations Committee, in the studio tomorrow.
There are no strings on me.
There's no Marriott strings, Lex Luthor, tomorrow on the program. For now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.